Good evening and welcome to the first edition of 15 Minutes with Longevity. I'm Gisele Wertheim Aymes and I'll be your host over the coming months. I hope you'll join us here for your weekly dose of health advice. Tonight we're talking about colds and flu and how you can stay healthy during the chilly winter months. With us tonight on our panel to answer all your questions is Dr Tshidi Gule, a medical practitioner, founder of the Medispace, a unique wellness and lifestyle management center. Tshidi is one of the few doctors I know who actually does house calls. Dr Ela Manga is an integrated medical practitioner at the Woodlands Center for Wellbeing and Spa. She's a body talk practitioner whose approach is holistic and focused more on the mind-body-spirit connection, conscious living, using solid scientifically based methods of diagnosis and treatment combined with complementary methods. Welcome to both of you here this evening. Thanks for joining me in the studio. So the first thing I'm going to ask you, Dr Manga, is colds and flu, everyone interchanges the terminology. What is a cold? What is flu? Are they different? And does it really matter?
Well, basically, I think the first thing to realize is that both colds and flu are caused by viruses. Whereas a cold is more centered around the upper respiratory tract. So the symptoms are less severe. Runny nose, people may have some joint pain, but the symptoms are mainly around the upper respiratory tract. Whereas with the flu, the symptoms are more generalized and it could be, the symptoms could include a fever, joint pain. The symptoms are slightly more severe.
And the illness. They're different and they require different treatments.
Absolutely.
So Dr. Gule, should we treat them? I mean, we have a cold, we have a flu. Grandma has different advice to doctors these days. I used to be sent back to bed with, hot water bottle and told to sleep it off. But today everyone takes all sorts of things. What is the common?
Look, the general principle with physiology and science in general is that your body knows essentially what to do, especially in the first 72 hours of encompassing any infection. One of the biggest debates going on around in our industry at the moment is how long should we allow the natural human defenses to kick in before we start intervening and assisting the system. For example, you'll hear in many health journals it's been cited that fever is actually a proactive and a good thing for the body because it allows the normal immunity response to fight the bug and create antibody responses that are sufficient to kill the infection so that it remembers the infection the next time. I think the biggest thing right now is that we have a very reactive and almost paranoid response when it comes to any bugs. I think the swine flu really made us wake up and get a little bit panicky about how we treat normal colds and flu. And the normal rule from my perspective really is the first 48 hours, if a person can handle it, you let them, the immune system ride it out. If things are getting worse, like the symptoms that Ella has been talking about, if they start having shortness of breath, if they start vomiting and having nausea, having bad diarrhea, the muscle joints get worse, that's really the time where the body you can then step in from a practitioner perspective.
And then when you mean step in, what do you mean? In your case, Ella, what would stepping in mean?
Well, as Tshidi said, I think it's really important to understand that the body has an innate intelligence the body has all the capability to help ourselves to deal with the infection. So how do we support the immune system? It's keeping well hydrated. It's resting. I think rest is the most important thing. People so often just want to dampen symptoms and carry on with life. So I think the most important thing to remember is if you have a cold and the flu, you need to be in bed. And you need to boost your immune system with a healthy diet, keep well hydrated, and just be aware that if you're taking medication, some of the medication could actually be suppressing the very thing that your body needs to do to help the body to overcome the infection.
Flu vaccines, very popular, Dr. Gule, and a lot of corporates, you have corporate programs where you've all got to have the flu injection.
Right.
What is your view on them? Who should have them? Is everyone qualified to have a flu injection, or are there some people who shouldn't even consider it?
From a medical side, I'm really respectful of obviously the World Health Organization guidelines as a practitioner. There is a group called the high risk group that they talk about, pregnant women, generations in terms of citizens older than 65. There is a lot of debate going on about that right now. But certainly people who've got suppressed immune systems to a point where you know that physiologically they cannot mount a response. In our country, we face a lot of that in terms of communicable diseases, such as TB, HIV. You've got people with chronic heart disease where simple flu can complicate quite easily. You also look at people who've got chronic lung diseases where you've got to take consideration that because flu, and especially colds and flu, have a seasonal occurrence every year, and it's about 6 to 8 weeks in spring or winter, you've really got to consider the fact that really dampening the risk of complications is of benefit to them. What you cannot guarantee, and this is where the scientists are now having a big debate and doing clinical studies, is whether or not giving the vaccine guarantees the dampening of symptoms. But the logic behind vaccination ultimately is that we want to limit the complications that can arise from these viruses. And one of the biggest ones is heart and brain complications.
I think the other thing to be aware of is that there are 2,000 viruses that cause colds and flu. With the flu vaccine, the researchers isolate 3 or 4 viruses that they predict will be most prevalent in the coming season, and they create the vaccine based on that. So taking the flu vaccine doesn't guarantee you from protection, exactly.
So really looking on preventative. Now I've got an issue around the etiquette around flu. What is good flu etiquette? Okay, because you can catch flu from anything. I mean, it's very contagious.
Absolutely. Viruses predominantly are spread through coughs, sneezes, droplet spread, and what we call indirect spread, which is, I think, where the etiquette question really comes in. Now, indirect spread is if I am at a contagious phase, and normally viruses take a good 7 to 14 days, and some viruses now take even longer to actually clear from someone's system. So you can be quite contagious for a long time. Touching the same surfaces that we share, so in office and corporate environments and the home environment, can really expose people to having the infection. The biggest thing that for me is the most important is if you are in close contact with someone who is ill, your hygiene is the most important way you can literally make sure that you behave according to what your body is trying to avoid, which is having an infection from that person. So of course, exchange of bodily fluids like saliva, so we can go into that romantic department like kissing, is an interesting question. Washing hands, without doubt, still the most important thing, especially before you're in contact and after you're in contact with someone who's contagious. The biggest question I usually get is, but doctor, I'm always at a mall. I never know who's got infection and who's not. So you keeping clean is the most important start. And probably a sanitizer doesn't hurt.
Great. Okay. It's been wonderful chatting to you. We've run out of time. Thank you, Dr. Gule. Thank you, Dr. Manga. Great to have you on the show. Appreciate you joining us. Our team recently spoke to Discovery Health Clinic specialist Naluthandu Nematswarani on this topic. Let's take a look.
According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, each flu season, nearly 111 million workdays are lost due to the flu. That equals approximately $7 billion per year in sick days and lost productivity. Through education and planning, you can help protect your employees from the seasonal flu.
It's very important to understand that once people do get these serious symptoms, because remember, they get fatigue, they get high fevers, they get muscle aches, and therefore they cannot be able to come and be productive at work. So we lose days. So people will stay at home. So absenteeism is high. So you get about lost days of 2.4 to 5 days a week where people are off sick and they're not really productive in the workplace. And there are some people who force themselves and come to work, and you find that even though they are there, so it's almost like presenteeism, so they are there but they're not fully productive. I think we need to understand that the impact of flu vaccination is around the fact that it reduces the severe forms of flu that require hospitalization and also require people to spend more days at home. So if you look at the general population, not looking at the elderly, this will be in the region of 70 to 90% reduction in those severe illnesses. When you look at the elderly, the stats become lower, but it's still very significant because these are the high-risk patients that we really want to make sure that are covered. So flu vaccination is the most important thing that you can offer employees at this time of the year for prevention of flu. It really does work.
Joining me in the studio, I have David Shapiro, Deputy Chairman at Sasfin Securities, well-known market analyst and stock market commentator. David, You might be all those things, but I know you as a marathon runner, actually, and a person that I admire for your fitness and longevity. So, kind of first thing I'm going to ask you is, how long have you been running for?
I've been running for a long time, for
No, I know
over 30 years.
That's amazing.
More than that, 35 years I started. So I try and run 5-6 times a week. I still go at it. So I know all about colds and flu.
So we were talking about colds and flu, and I think you've had a particular experience where you ran a marathon, and maybe you want to tell us a little bit about that, because it's a good lesson.
Yeah, I ran the Boston Marathon. I wasn't feeling all that well, and I thought I'd prepared for it. It was a major event. I was running with my daughter, but I started off, and halfway through at about the 20-21 mark, I started to feel very, very poor, and I told my daughter to go on. All I can tell you is I spent a week in bed afterwards, you know, tucked under a blanket, etc. I really battled, and I think that over the years, the one lesson you must learn is if your body doesn't feel good, you know, we all feel we've got to go out and run, especially in winter, and we feel that we're lazy or you know, just maybe unfit. But don't do it. It's the worst thing you can do. I'm not a medical man. All I know is that the consequences of running when you've got cold or flu are far worse than maybe missing one day's exercise.
Great. Now, do you have some tips to give us on how you would keep healthy this winter? What are you doing about it?
You know, the one thing about us, you can run, as long as you don't push yourself over the edge. I think that's it. I think the weather is perfect. I don't think that you must avoid doing exercise during cold weather, etc. Whether you should take any muti or any specialized drugs or vitamins, etc.
But you don't?
I don't.
Okay,
but I mean,
great. You do it the good old-fashioned way.
I do the good old-fashioned way, but don't be stupid.
Great. Thanks for joining us. Great to have you on the program. Well, that's it for this evening's program. I hope you'll join me next week when I talk skin health with my panel of experts, Dr. Rakesh Nuaj and Dr. Madeleine Duvenage. Have a great week, take care, and stay healthy.